Later, I will introduce him further. But anyway, really welcome everybody to LiveLifeToTheFullest.tv. And we know that you're here because you are excited to find out more about what is DNA profiling, and especially in the area of personality. Now, those who have been following us, especially last week, you have been hearing about personality profiling. And itself, it is a very, very powerful tool in order to help us to understand ourselves. And as we know or understand ourselves better, then we were able to, in a better position to manage ourselves, and also able to better manage our relationship, all right, either with our spouse, with our siblings, with our family members, with our friends, well, even with your co-workers or your bosses. So itself, personality profiling, it is actually really very powerful, rather than you try to struggle and say, who am I? So of course today, we want to venture a little bit to almost an unknown, because personality profiling itself, it is not new, because there are many, many instruments that actually can do that. But for today, we're going to have a little bit more on discussion on how or what is DNA profiling and how it can really benefit us, right, in terms of understanding ourselves and with people. So with this, let us welcome Cedric Lee. All right, just allow me to give a very brief introduction about him. All right, he is a healthcare expert. All right, so he has been in this industry for many years. So he has certain knowledge about this DNA, and especially in the area of the profiling side. And today we would like to have him around so that we can have a discussion about this area. And of course, we hope that through LiveLifeToTheFullest.tv, we can have more of this session to explore further into different kind of tools or instruments that can help us psychologically, emotionally, all right, with our issues, especially in the midst of this pandemic, where a lot of us are really very, very stressed over several issues, all right, especially relationship. All right, so with this, I will hand over to Cedric and to allow him to introduce himself. And then that's where later on, Uncle Roland going to ask him many, many questions and see how much I can dig from him and then to share with all of you. All right, so with that, over to you. All right.
Yeah, hi everyone, my name is Cedric, and thank you Roland for the very kind introduction. So yes, I've been in healthcare for the past 16 years, right? So I work for many large organizations, and my customers are mainly doctors and scientists, and yeah, the following. Now, for me, I have a keen interest in genetic science, because I think genes is a very interesting topic, because we are all made of genes, right? So without genes, without DNA, there won't be any one of us, right? And one of the reasons why we are all so different is also because of a very, very slight difference, to be honest, 0.01% of our genetic makeup. Right, because 99.9% of us, all human beings, right, despite how different we look, is actually the same. Our genetic makeup, 99.9% the same, which makes genetic science a very interesting topic. And by using it, potentially modern medicine and even future solutions can really help humanity. Yeah.
All right, so Cedric, we're going to take this opportunity and to start to drill you with questions. So maybe share with us, what is DNA profiling? From the broad terms, all right. So yes.
Yeah. So now essentially DNA profiling, I'll take it as two separate words: DNA and profiling. Now I'm sure all of us here, we love profiling systems, right? Like DISC. right? Even the color coding, even the Brick Myers, the kind of profiling system, because every one of us wants to know a little bit about ourselves, right? Our strength, our weaknesses, our behavioral traits, right? Our talents. So DNA profiling is the same, right? It's also about profiling ourselves, but it's using genetics. Because I'm sure a lot of us are very familiar with people saying, oh, look, your father is very creative, the son is also very creative, right? Because DNA is not just about looking the same or having visual similarities, but it's also having similar behavioral trait. There's sometimes certain parents who have anger management issues, then their children also sometimes have that kind of issue because the genetic traits passed down. So not just talents, but also behavior. So DNA profiling, as the name implies, is by taking a snapshot of a person's DNA profile, either by a saliva swab or a blood test, and then running through science, and then coming out with a map or a report which shows what kind of behavioral traits, what kind of inborn talents a person may have at birth, right? And then by knowing all this, how this particular person with that knowledge can actually do corrective action or even nurture some of their strengths or correct some of their weaknesses moving forward in life. Yeah.
Okay, just curious, Cedric. When you say it started with a swab test and then sent for analysis and until you get the report, how long would it take in order to get all these results? Because why I'm asking this is because like you were mentioning about other kind of personality profiling. It's basically just filling a questionnaire and then maybe even through software it can straight away generate one report for you. But how about this DNA profiling?
Yeah, so obviously for software, for systems, those are really fast because those are following a set of principles, right? But the problem with tests like this is that it is a system that people can cheat and they can deliberately adjust the kind of answers they give to come out with a desired result. But DNA profiling is really based on DNA, and DNA don't lie because it's science, right? Science don't lie. So it's either black or it's either white. So if you use DNA test profiling, then the results will definitely be more accurate in terms of your behavior, in terms of talent, but of course it will take a longer time. Now, how long that will take really much depends on the methodology of taking the test, as well as the laboratory which the test sample is sent to run the thing. So let's say assuming if is the provider, okay, of a DNA report is very good, right? So the supply chain management is done properly, right? From where a person would do a saliva swab to then milling it out. Maybe you will reach the laboratory, okay, if it's within the same country, within the week. Right, if it's overseas, maybe 2 to 3 weeks, right? Then after that, running the test. So if the test itself is done in a good laboratory with very sophisticated equipment, the shortest time, as far as I know, is about 10 days, right? 10 days. But if let's say we're looking at a very, very basically old equipment, or if the laboratory is actually not very well furbished, we may even be as long as 1 month or even 2 months before we get the result. Yeah, so it depends.
Okay. So I think now we have a better idea how this is being carried out. And definitely, you want something that's accurate, definitely it's not as straightforward, right? Yeah. Okay. So, of course, we know that DNA profiling is a very, very big so-called topic because it covers everything about who we are. For of course today's session, I don't think we really can go into everything. In fact, we're hoping that we have a series, all right, so that we can explore each of every DNA profiling as deep as possible, so that we can share with all of you. By the way, those who are with us, all right, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Those who are on Facebook, please follow us. And of course, if you are interested to have a Q&A session with us, join us, all right, in our Zoom session right now. So give us a request we will give you the Zoom link so that you can join us, all right, based on our invitation. So with this, right, let us now go into a little in-depth. So Cedric, what then is DNA personality profiling?
Okay, so DNA personality profiling basically means taking the DNA and then unlocking certain behavioral traits of the personality, right? So things like anger management, that itself is a personality trait. Okay, things like whether a person is sociable or not, that's also a personality trait. Do you know in America, right, there are actually people that sell DNA tests to assess whether a person's love ratio, or whether how good are they to be so-called potential partner or lover, right? Because whether being social or not is not just a trained response for human being, but it's also a genetic response. So if you Google, you can actually find that whether a person is a social butterfly, or what we call a wallflower, means to say someone who is always hanging around the wall, right, is also based on genetic science, right, and their genes. But of course, if let's say a person's social behavior is a bit weak, they can always train later in life. But if you have a gene that says that you are more outspoken, you are more assertive, and you are more friendly, it actually helps you in life a lot, right? So DNA personality profiling is based on that. But of course, at this point, some people may ask, right, how is it true? Because how can DNA tell you whether a person is sociable or not, whether a person is aggressive or not? I can tell you it is true because it's all based now to this what I call this research done in 2003. It's called the Human Genome Project. Now, by 2003, the Human Genome Project, they essentially assess a lot of people and they unlock the whole genetic sequence of a human being. So, and nowadays, I believe how modern genetic science they are doing it by doing profiling is that they are actually finding genes, certain genes that a common group of people with a similar behavioral trait share. So what they do is, let's say for example, they take a lot of smart people together and then they do gene sampling, right? So then if they have certain similar genes through this group of people, then they call it the smart genes, right? So certain people who are a bit more sociable, they put them together, and then after that, they do gene sampling, and then those genes that they have something in common, we call them the sociable gene, right? So by doing that, we have a lot of different personality profiles that people can get, okay, from their genes, and then be presented into a report.
Wow. So in other words, it is really based on medical research, all right, scientific research, and then from there, through the lab tests, we're able to sort of accurately to give you a profiling simply based on the genes that already has been identified. Okay, so in other words, because I was trying to ask the next question, like then how accurate the DNA personality profiling? Now, what I'm trying to say is that how it can really sort of measure our personality in terms of the trait. You were saying that, okay, it can maybe measure our anger management or here and there. But just wonder how we know that it is accurate.
Yeah, so I would say anything that is based on science, to be honest, is accurate, right? Because it's following a system and a process, okay, of deriving, of taking a sample of the test and then deriving into a result. But it's through this process that there will be variables that will change the accuracy. Okay, because the science itself is always accurate because it's really the genetic genes is already mapped out, but the process itself can be have a lot of variable. So I give you an example. If let's say you were to do a genetic test with a very good company, with very good processes, okay, and very good science equipments. So what happens is that then the sample of the saliva that you take will be well preserved, well packaged, so there will be no contamination. And then when you send it to the laboratory, and then the equipment that they use will also be very high technology, and then the kind of sampling they do and the kind of testing and analysis they do is also very accurate. And then the result is then or therefore accurate, up to 99.9%, right? But if let's say, for example, through this process, let's say there'll be contamination. Let's say a person were to, when they do a saliva swab, maybe they don't fast beforehand. Maybe they eating food, all right, or they are sweet, and the contaminants of the food actually contaminates the sample. So when the sample is sent to the laboratory, right, and even with a very good equipment, the result may be skewed because the sample itself already is corrupted, right? But if let's say, for example, the sample is good, but the equipment is not so good, right? And then when you do it, when you give it to it, and then the picture, the image, the result that comes out is not clear, then there'll be a lot of guessing, right? So what I'm trying to say is that the science is accurate, but to prove the accuracy of from the sample to the report, it has a lot more variable. So if you want to do a DNA test and you want to make sure it's very accurate, please go to use a good provider, a good company that does that. Okay, there's a few out there, and I think myself and Roland would love to give you a recommendation, right? But if you also ask how accurate is the report, assuming everything is done properly, how accurate is the report compared to a say a psychometric profiling test, not genetic but psychometric profiling test, then I can tell you it is way more accurate than a psychometric profiling test. Why? Is because a psychometric profiling test is based on our personality and character on that point of time, all right, on that point of time. But genetic profile is based on underlying, because in science, in life, you know, we say nature and nurture, right? Some people they prefer nature, some people they prefer nurture. But truth be told, is actually both nature and both nurture is very important, right? It's a combination of that. But nurture can always be changed. That's why if you do a psychometric test right now, it may give you a particular score. But maybe 3 years from now, as your life environment changes, you do a test again, maybe the score and the result is different. But if you do a genetic test, okay, nature, right now what you do is that same result. 3 years, 4 years, 10 years later, if you do again, it will still give you that same result. That doesn't change. And you can then use that as a foundation, okay, to then apply corrective action or apply changes to your nurture to get the desired outcome that you want in life.
So I now can see the application of some psychometric personality profiling tool. It has its own purpose.
Yeah.
All right. Likelihood is really to understand the personality of that person at that moment, at that point of time. And it is important. It's just that if you want to do any intervention, then it will only be based on that circumstances, that instant or that point of time of his or her life. Whereas if you want to go to the root of the problem, then most probably a DNA profiling or DNA personality profiling will be able to provide some kind of fundamental answer or even approach that can help you to overcome a lifelong problem. So this is something that for all of us to be aware of, so that we can choose the right tools in order to help our own self-development. So just want to continue that. Then for this DNA personality profiling, how many types of genes are involved?
Okay, so right now, DNA profiling itself, there are different kind of brands and companies representing it. Obviously, there are different kinds of genetic resolution, we call it, right? So the company that I know, okay, actually does about 40 variants, more than 40 variants. So 40 variants of a genes is interesting because it looks at 40 different versions of a gene to actually get the result. So some companies out there, they actually do less than that. Some do maybe, I haven't met one that do more than that before, but I'll say 40 variants is more or less a very good resolution for that. Because and how these variants work, right, is very much based on resolution like an image, like a picture, right? So if the resolution is high, then the image that comes out from going through the testing in the lab is clearer, and then the scientists can actually then derive more information and put it into the report for you. If let's say, for example, if the variance and the resolution is low, all right, let's say, for example, it's only 10 variants, right, then the image that comes out is blurry, right, and then the scientists will not be able to take out as much profile, and they will need to do more guesswork in order to put the information in the report for the consumers. So I would say 40 is actually a good number.
Wow, so in other words, it's not just based on a single factor. In fact, some of the psychometric instruments, they based on several questions, but in this case, of course, they based on 40 different kinds of genes in this case. Okay, so maybe we'll take this opportunity to really dig a little in depth. What are all these like 40 genes that are being involved? So let's say in this case, we know that under this personality profiling, one of the indicators, all right, actually something that's related to emotional intelligence. So maybe what are the various either behaviors or factors that are actually being considered under this emotional intelligence? And maybe Cedric can share with us.
Yeah, so there are actually quite a few traits that can be classified under emotional intelligence, or I think they say EQ. So some of these things are like anger management, right? You can actually use genes to understand whether a person has a higher propensity to get angry easily, right? So and I mentioned about being sociable. So whether a person is a social butterfly or whether a person is a wallflower, is also influenced by their genetic makeup, right? So then also whether a person is a risk taker, okay? So it's also influenced by their genetic makeup. Whether a person is assertive or not, right? So assertiveness is also linked to leadership qualities. So it's also influenced by their genetic makeup. So there are some, and there are obviously more traits we can talk about this, but again, it differs from report to report, right? So, but one thing's for sure, genetic science at this point of time is still a very, very up and coming technology, right? So even though by 2003, the Human Genome Report, they have unlocked the whole sequence of genetic human genes, but not all genes have been deciphered yet. So there's still a large percentage of them that's not deciphered, right? So we call them the dark gene, right? So and over time, as more scientists they do more research, more traits will be known, and therefore more behavior, okay, can also be deciphered along the time. So if you want to know about this, there are actually some companies out there. Very interestingly, they provide a lifetime guarantee. So if you do their genetic reports with them, and you become one of their members, for example, they actually give you lifetime access to your genetic report. So as genetic science improves, then the report actually evolves over time to give you more information about you, right? So that's pretty interesting. But in essence, some of the traits I mentioned to you can be found in your genetic personality test.
Wow. Okay. So in this personality profiling, I think Cedric have explained one of the big areas, which is the EQ, the emotional intelligence, which you have explained some of the variants and some of the genes that is involved. Another aspect of this DNA personality profiling is actually, I believe, is something that a lot of you will be very interested, especially parents. All right, and that is really the intellectual intelligence. So Cedric, what are the various intellectual intelligence indicators that can be found in this DNA personality profiling report?
Yeah, so there's a few things. Again, so coming back to IQ, so one of it obviously is intelligence, right? So how smart the person is, right? And then the other one is also to do with the capacity to learn. Because intelligence itself is a very complex thing. Even sometimes smart people, very smart people, can be very stupid at times, right? But even very not so smart people, but can still spout very wise words at times, right? So so there is no clear factor, say just because a person's IQ through a psychometric test is low, doesn't mean to say this person must be condemned and then forever not smart. Same thing for a DNA test. So the scientists are very careful because, again, intelligence is a very sensitive topic, right? So what the term is that intelligence is a capacity to learn. Okay, it's a capacity to learn, and it's a capacity to process information fast enough to respond to a certain stimulus. So if let's say, for example, by doing a DNA test, and they say that, okay, your intelligence quotient is high, that means to say the ability of you to process information is faster than the rest. Okay, but if let's say a person, for example, the intelligence quotient is low, and some people actually get very sensitive because of that, right? Doesn't mean to say they are dumb. It just means to say maybe they need more time to process information because there's a lot of information out there. But having said that, remember previously I mentioned, ultimately everything in life is about nature and nurture. So even if you have someone who is very, very smart, okay, they have high intelligence score genetically, but if you don't put them into an environment where there's a lot of stimulus, that nurtures their natural intellect, right, they still come out to be not so smart. Right. Of course, then the other trait I mentioned to you about is something like educational attainment. So, like how fast a person's learn. Right. So, a person who has high intelligence and then they learn things pretty fast as well. Again, based on their genetic makeup, then those people will typically do very well in life. Right, and you can put them into a lot of different industries, a lot of people, different things to learn, to get new skills, they will do well. But a person who maybe they are smart, but then their educational attainment is a bit lower, right? Then they don't pick up things as fast. They can process things fast, but they don't pick up things as fast, and they need more time. And then for these people, sometimes you don't want to stress them. If you stress them, then and they give up because they have no interest in it anymore, or they think they are bad, or maybe some of their behavioral response is that they cannot take stress very well, as I mentioned before, right? So that will actually be even worse for them, right? So it's all a balance, to be honest.
All right. So interestingly, also, I was holding to a sample of a report that even this intellectual intelligence, it also able to give information about short-term memory performances, all right, and verbal creativity, and even mathematical and figural creativity. So maybe Cedric can give us a little more.
Sure. So now we know that creativity again is also linked to talents, right? So whether a person is creative or not. So it's linked to genes because it's also part of how we use the brain, right? So and some people who are very, very say they're book smart, but maybe they can't draw, they can't sing, they don't have an ounce of creative talent in them because of the way their brain it works. So same thing for some people who are very, very creative, right? But they are bad with numbers. So that's why in the report that this Roland is reading, because he has done the report. So it shows that there are some trait called numerical and figurative talent. So that means to say that people who are good at that, they're good with numbers. And these people, if you know that they have that kind of talent, then you should steer them to become accountants and bankers. Right? People who are good creatively, all right, then we can steer them to become artists and even become professional speakers because speaking is linked to creativity as well.
Wow, this is amazing. But of course, later I'm going to ask another question, which is, does that mean that the genes will actually, determine our destiny? All right. But I think just now Cedric has been sharing that by understanding ourselves, actually there's something we can do about it. Something that we will later discuss further. Just to raise an awareness for everybody that this personality profiling, in fact, there is a third component, is actually what we call the self-control. And there are some of these indicators as part of our genes that actually determine the amount of self-control we have. So maybe with that, let's have Cedric to explain to us a little bit more.
Okay, thank you, Roland. So self-control, I would assume, are things like control of alcohol, control of smoking, and maybe even control of food. right? Because we all know that things like alcohol, things like smoking, and things like food, people can get addicted to them. Now, why people get addicted to them is the more people consume, that sometimes it releases endorphins in the body, and then it's a feel-good hormone, right? And then people crave that, especially when, let's say, in this modern time where there's a lot of depressing situation, maybe even like COVID-19, right? So people will turn to that. So now our body all has a natural genetic response to that. Have you ever wondered why there are some of your friends out there, they can drink a lot, but then they don't get drunk? Or even better, they smoke a lot, right? But when they want to quit, they just quit. And they don't feel a lot of effects of quitting, or they need to go cold turkey, right? So a lot has to again do with their genetic makeup. So it's all about the genetic makeup that governs what is their threshold of tolerance of resisting this kind of addiction, right? So food itself is also very addictive. So I know a lot of Singaporeans, we love to eat good food. And sometimes people eat good food, it's just to get away from depressing moments, right? And they cannot stop them because it has become an addiction. But there are some people who can control it, and then they don't turn on to it because they know it's bad for their body. So genes does play a part in that as well.
So that will give us the next question, which is, now knowing our so-called genetic makeup, then does that mean that we can't do anything about it? So in other words, right, what is really the use of this profiling? If let's say I would know that, I'm more susceptible to addiction to alcohol or smoking and here and there. So what does it really mean? What does this profiling result really mean to a person? Cedric.
Yeah. So thank you, Roland. So now, to be honest, all these guys are knowledge, and we all know knowledge is power, but rather it's the power to enact on it and influence a change to get the outcome that you want, right? So now, if we know, let's say for example, let's say I'll use an example of a parent. If the parents know that the child after doing a genetic test maybe is very creative, okay? They learn things very fast, okay? But not good with numbers, but can take stress very well. Now, wouldn't then that parent be steering that child into a particular career path that emphasizes on their strength, right? So similarly, if let's say for example, if somebody who do a genetic test and they realize that, hey, maybe naturally they can't take stress very well, when they are placed in stressful situation, they tend to overreact, right? And then it's not good for everyone, right? So now, if you know that knowledge, wouldn't you want to avoid employment or avoid situations where it would trigger your gene? And then you will then want to focus on what you're good at. So it's knowledge like this that makes it very powerful. That makes it very, very powerful because then you can then steer your life according to your strength and not by compensating your weakness.
In fact, just to also add on that, sometimes knowing that, it also can help you to develop other skill sets. Like for example, if let's say I'm easily angered, then most probably I will have to learn technique of how to calm myself down. Or if I'm easily stressed, then isn't it the more I need to acquire more ways or change of my lifestyle or habit so that I can able to manage my own emotions, and
yes,
etc.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. And I'll share with you a funny story, right? So a friend of mine, he's married. Now he always quarrels with his wife last time because he has a very short attention span. And every time his wife is talking to him, and within 5 minutes, the guy, my friend, he was straight. His attention was straight, and then the wife always goes in for not paying attention to her, right? So then what happened was that actually my friend of mine, he went to do a genetic report, and then through the genetic report, it shows that he has very short attention span, and his nature is genetic, so he can't help it. And when he showed that to his wife became very understanding, and so I said, okay, you can't help it, so it's not your fault. And then therefore they never argued again based on this particular topic. So it's actually quite funny, but it also shows that sometimes we can't help it because it's based on our genes. But people don't know, and if you know that this is the reason why we behave a certain way, then we can understand it, and other people around us who loves us can also understand and forgive us.
Ah, okay, so now I'm getting it. So in other words, right, many of time, in terms of our relationship, sometimes we put our own expectation on others. Because the reasoning will be most probably like, if I can do it, so can you. But then again, because we are assuming that the other person is just like you, and because of that, you have that expectation. And now with this, something that is more objective and rational, and that actually able to help each other to understand why the person is so different from yourself. And I think with that, it comes with acceptance. And with the acceptance, then you will be able to manage the communication and improve. So this is really an amazing kind of profiling, which I think something that cannot lie. All right, and I think more importantly, it goes down to the roots of the problem. So in that case, right, I just want to round up, all right, with these few last questions. So then, how can this DNA personality profiling really, use as a self-help tool? In other words, for an individual, how this can be used as a self-help tool?
Okay, so as I mentioned previously before, now genetic science is not set in stone, right? Just because based on our genetic test we say that we have a certain profile, doesn't mean to say we can't change it, because that's where nature is from, right? We human beings, we are very smart people, we're very complex people. We can always mask our nature, but first of all, is identify what's our foundation first. Right, so now how can DNA personality profiling help individual is first of all understanding your foundation and your base that doesn't change. And once you understand that base and that foundation, then you're able to decide how you want to branch off and develop into a character, okay, or a person that you want, right? And you can then also be using other profiling tests as a measure, okay, as a measure of how you are like at this specific point of time. So I give you an analogy. Some people actually mistake genetic science as like a blood test. A blood test to do a health screening, right, is to measure the status of your health at that moment, at that period of time. It doesn't tell you genetically whether you'll be fat, you'll be skinny, you'll be hefty, you have cardiovascular illness. Okay, genetic science can do that, but that one is talking only about potential, right? But a blood, that is a genetic test, but a health screening test is all about that moment in time. So same thing. So a DNA personality profiling test can be used to understand your foundation, and then you can then also do other psychometric tests, which then gives you a picture of how you are like, okay, and how close you are to the desired person you want to be, okay, based on your foundation. And so if you match them together, then that creates a lot of power in terms of giving you the power and the influence to determine your destiny in life.
I thought that is a very, very good advice, in the sense that you do not just rely on one single tool. In fact, you should, or we encourage you to use multiple tools, and so that with that you can help yourself or understand yourself better. In fact, not only just as a person, also in terms of what you are doing or when you are. All right. So I think that's a good advice. Now the next question will be then how this DNA personality profiling can help a person like in a family or in a workplace context.
Okay, so in the family context, so I'll break it down into a few parts. I'll break it down to pre-family, means to say before you form a family, and then after you form a family, right? So assuming now you guys are dating, and let's say you love your boyfriend, or you love your girlfriend a lot, right? But then sometimes you guys quarrel, right? But you don't know what's the problem. Then get each other to do a DNA test. Maybe the person who is always picking an argument with you has anger management issues genetically, and they don't know that, right? But once they know that, A is either they would choose to try to suppress it even more because they know it's part of their nature, or they will just use that as an excuse, say, oh look, I have anger management issues, and therefore it gives me freedom to do that. Now, when you know that information about your partner, you can also decide, again, to have a choice, whether you want to be with him or her, or move on and find someone that's more genetically compatible to you, right? So that's pre-family. So post-family is once you guys come together, right? So how are you going to use genetic testing, right? So one way is, the reason why people come together is obviously to have children, right? You want to have offspring. So when you have offspring, you can then be conducting genetic testing and then finding out what are the natural strengths and talents of your children, and then how you can steer them towards a better path in life, right? And maybe even if you never do the genetic test before a post-family, after family, it's always good to understand. Because just because you sign a piece of paper that's called marriage doesn't mean to say it's happily ever after, right? You have to work at it day after day after day, right? So by understanding your own genetic trait and you're able to understand each other further, you then open up more communication. So that's my advice for the family setting. Now for the workplace setting, it's even more interesting because now we all know the world is revolving very fast around us, and it's all about big data. Right now, you know, I'm sure a lot of companies are starting to employ psychometric tests to do personality profiling and talent profiling for their employee candidates, right? But it will maybe very soon come to a point of time whereby companies may be using genetic tests to test their potential interviewees as well. And the reason why they're doing that is because, as I mentioned, psychometric tests can be influenced and can be changed based on a smart person who answer it based on what they want to answer, right? But a genetic test can't lie. It tells a person, so if let's say, for example, if a person is being interviewed for a sales job, what the company will want to know is whether this person is socially talented or not, or whether the person has verbal creativity, means can talk or not. Right, so if the person has that, then the box is ticked. But if let's say, for example, if this person is coming for a sales job and this person genetically doesn't have that kind of talents, then it will actually put them in a bad light for this particular job scope. And maybe the company want to steer them towards another job scope that is more fitting for their talents. And it's always good for interviewees to know about yourself and go for apply a job that is good for you, rather than you go and then let them interview you and find out your genetic makeup and then tell you about it. Right? So that's how it can be used.
Wow, so it can really be a very powerful tool, really to help yourself, not as an individual, but also with your relationship with people within your family or even outside of the family, especially workplace. And I can imagine that if using this tool, how much frustration it can save you, and how much mistakes that you can avoid, and what kind of decision that you can make for yourself that is really effective, and most probably that will save you many years, so that you can achieve more. So wow, this is interesting, and we are now coming almost to the end of this discussion before we go into a Q&A. So let me have just a couple of questions so that we can round up this whole thing. So how do you think that then this DNA, because since we are on this media channel, LiveLifeToTheFullest.tv, now how do you think that this DNA personality profiling can help an individual to really live their life to the fullest?
Well, thanks for that question, Roland. Now, to be honest, all of us, we are different human beings, and we have different aspirations and different goals, and our version of living our life to the fullest is very different, right? So all of us have different dreams. So, and that's why by understanding ourselves more, I believe, and obviously through a genetic test, we are then able to understand the foundation. And through the foundation, we are able also to know whether some of the dreams that we want to achieve, okay, or the goals that we want, whether they are measurable and whether they are realistic or not. And if they are not, then again, we always have a chance to change our goals and then live life to the fullest in another manner. Because I believe our life is only determined by a specific time frame, right? And sometimes life can end very short, last minute. So it's very important that to spend our time wisely. And I always believe by spending our time with knowledge, with empowerment, okay, of knowing what we are and how we improve on it, is far better than groping in the dark. Because there's so much time lost that people attempting to try different things because they don't know whether they are good at it or not. So this, I believe, with information like this about themselves, about a person, right, then they are able to structure a better vision, a better pathway to allow them to live their life to the fullest, not just for themselves, but maybe even for the people around them.
Wow, I think Cedric nicely summarized what an individual can do for themselves, all right, in order to achieve their goals and really to make full use of their time in this life. So this one last question. How can this DNA profiling help the individuals and family during this pandemic? Now, we just want to be relevant at this point in time, and we know that many families are going through very difficult time. Some, of course, because of the circuit breaker or the lockdown, they have never faced each other 24/7 until this period, and there's so much tension. Not only that, they are also troubled, even their children also suffer. And there is also others facing financial issues and here and there, and it creates a lot of tension within the family. Now, how then can this DNA personality profiling really help an individual and their family during this period?
Okay, thank you, Roland. So now I will, for this question, I'll maybe look back at just now the previous question about the question on the family and the workplace. So I'll say it's kind of similar in this context. So first for family, because yes, COVID-19 has given a lot of families unprecedented pressures, okay, because sometimes they are the father and the mother, they are not used to staying home together, but now they are forced to do that, and then faced with screaming kids, sometimes it will drive people crazy. Now and when people fight, is mainly because of the differences, okay, their own differences, and the expectation of what they have for each another, for one another, for each other. So now, if you do a genetic test, and first of all, it's something interesting. You guys can actually be taking a look at each other's genetic report, right, and then commenting on it, and then knowing each other's strengths and weaknesses, and then maybe understanding from each other's point of view that sometimes certain things can't be helped because that's how genetically they are like. Okay, and then maybe they try to come and even have exercise or even project to try to correct each other's behavioral weakness, for example, right? And then with better understanding, then perhaps there's less friction, and then you can have a happier family, right? Even during the lockdown period, where you have faced with isolation. So that's on the family side. Now another impact that pandemic has for us right now is obviously the financial side and the economic side. Now I can tell you that I foresee more and more people will be faced with unemployment very soon, because we haven't really gotten the impact of the depression, the economic depression yet, right? So it's still catching up onto that. So in fact, quite a few of my friends are actually unfortunately retrenched or going to be retrenched. So so now, when that happens, right, it's very important, obviously, that people need to find something else to do, whether it's another job or whether it's starting a business. So it's all the more it's important now to understand what's their strength, what's their talents, and then based on that, find the jobs, and maybe start a business that is compatible with their strengths. Then they can do better. Because if you don't, you are going blind. Just because you have a great idea, business idea, doesn't mean to say you are the right fit for this idea. Right, so you have to have this knowledge to make the best decision in life.
Wow, so really thank you, Cedric, for sharing and giving so good advice. And of course, we also know that with the profiling, in fact, it also comes with some kind of recommendation. So this is something that for any one of you to really so-called study and analyze it and see whether is that the way that you can do and take action for your life. So we're coming almost towards the end before we move to the Q&A. In fact, we're going to go into Q&A very soon, and so that let's see what our participant in our Zoom session, whether they have any question for Cedric, and so that we can discuss further. But before we go into that, we just want to also get to know Cedric a little bit more personally. All right. So just want to know, like for Cedric, discussing about this kind of profiling, about life. How about yourself? What kind of struggle that you used to face before when you were young?
So for me, I've done many things in my past. I've worked for small companies. I worked for large companies. I've started my own businesses. So to me, life itself is been very interesting, and of course it's been very challenging. But it's very important again to have a very positive outlook in life, and to know that as long as we are still alive, we are still breathing, right, is a chance for progress. Now, I think a lot of why it have that kind of mindset, fortunately, I realize it also has to do with my genetic makeup. Because for me, I'm generally, naturally a very positive person. I try to be very forward-thinking, and therefore I'm able to make certain right decisions in life. And I don't see failures, or I don't see setbacks as that's it, the end. But I see them as a building block towards what I can actually grow to later on in the future. So for me, I do encourage that everyone who's facing a hard time now, if something bad happened to you, just don't dwell on it, but always be looking to what you can achieve or what you can get the next day, right? But again, that's also because of my genetic makeup, and I did my genetic test, so I'm able to understand a bit more about myself, and so I'm able to make certain right decisions in life. Yeah.
All right. So in that case, maybe elaborate further. How did you actually able to bounce back in life, knowing that you have all these struggles?
Yeah. Okay. So good question. So essentially, how do I bounce back? I think I can really sum it into a few words. It's just never give up, right? So if you don't give up, there will always be other opportunities, and if you keep looking at that silver lining, right? That will always be something better to do. And life is a never-ending process. So when you say never give up, it also don't mean to say you stand still, but you always keep progressing, always keep learning new skills, keep broadening your network. In fact, it's true. All this that I actually got to know Roland, and then I'm also given this very kind of opportunity to share my insights and my experience with everyone here. So you never know, right? You never know. So more often than not, sometimes try to say yes more than no, right? But once you have decided on certain path in your life that you say yes to, stick to it. And when you stick to it, and then everything else that wants to deter you from that path, okay, then you try to say no. But before you found your life path yet, okay, you try to say more yes, because that will expose you to more experiences and more opportunities and more knowledge on then what is actually the right fit for you, so that you can live your life to the fullest.
Okay, so in that case, right, then how about you? How are you adapting during this pandemic?
To me, I have adapted pros and cons. So obviously, the con is in this pandemic, we all put on weight. So because we all isolated, stay at home, and I need to do social distancing for my fridge, but not very successful. But on the pro side, it has actually given me a lot of chance to get to know my family more. Right, get to know my kids more, so we're happier together, right? So and of course, I also spend this time to learn a lot more new skills. So in fact, in this COVID-19 period, this lockdown, I actually learned how to do social media, how to do my own videos. I learned more about even this genetic science, right? I learned about that, and a lot of things that I learned, I have done research on, and of course keep practicing, and then you can then put the skills that you have learned into good use post COVID-19.
All right, so now our very last question before we go into the Q&A. All right, so is there a life wisdom that you can actually share with the audience, especially during this pandemic?
Well, I'll say it's something that's pretty simple, right? I guess life wisdom is that, and it's something that I think I shared just now. It's just never give up. Never give up, and keep striving for what you want in life. I think more often than not, people in life, they don't know what they want. So, and they are just going along with the tide, right? And they just go to where the tide carries them and go to where they want to meet the expectations of other people. But sometimes having this COVID-19 is generally bad, yes, health-wise, financial-wise. But sometimes it may not be a bad thing if you look at it positively. Because if you look at it positively, it may be that kick in the back that you need to steer you towards a dream that you always had, but you never had the chance to do it, right? And if this is a time that sometimes you know that we're faced with impending economic depression, something you want to attempt or even have a plan B, is something that you may want to focus on or even start to explore while you still have the capacity to. And of course, having said that, anything new will take time and will take experience, and it'll take a lot of practice. So don't give up. Keep persisting in it, and once you keep doing it, you will get good enough, you will master it, and that's where then you will have something of value that people will want, whether it's to hire you or whether to pay you money for service.
All right, so thank you very much for Cedric sharing so much. I think we have drilled him enough. Of course, right now what we can have is for our last section to really have a Q&A session and see what our audience have for us, and we'll try our best to respond. All right. Okay, so let's see, what do we have? Anyone who want to speak up, and then so that we want to give you priority. Oh, there's someone asking like, how much does this cost? Now, we are not intend to sell. All right, so this is something that if you are interested, that is where you can contact Uncle Roland, and so that we can discuss further. But I think what is more important is you understand how this tool or this instrument can really work for you. And like what Cedric said, if with the right tool and by understanding, using it to understand yourself, and so that you can maximize and optimize your life.
Yeah.
All right.
And can I say something about the price as well?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. So now, thank you for the question. Now, I can tell you, based on the market right now, there's actually many different types of genetic testing, right? There's very, very cheap ones. There's also very, very expensive ones, right? There's also mainstream ones. There's more for wellness and more for personality. And then there's the medical grade ones that's talking more about whether a person has a higher probability of getting cancer or other life-threatening illnesses. But ultimately on day, right, the reason why there's a difference in pricing in such a large spectrum, you must also understand as a savvy consumer, is the technology that's being used, right? So there are some people out there who maybe it's very cheap, okay, it's very affordable, but if they are maybe using very substandard technologies, and that's why, because their cost is lower, the price they're retailing to you is also very affordable, right? But when you get it, you're actually getting a substandard piece of report which doesn't give a lot of information, and in fact, there may even be a lot of guesswork there, okay? And that is an investment that you're putting to yourself for a report that doesn't change, because genes don't change, right? So of course, then the more expensive ones would be something that will be more credible, and they will probably be using a bit more higher technology. So of course, then you have to do more research in terms of what kind of technology they're using and this and that to give you the best results based on what you need for your life. Because ultimately, you need to buy based on what you need, right? So look at the range and then ask very smart questions on what you need, and then you then invest in it. But my suggestion to you is, don't be afraid of investing a bit more expensive into something that potentially can last you a lifetime. Because again, if you just need one report in your life and this report doesn't change, why settle for a cheaper one which you don't know whether the technology is dubious versus a more expensive one where it's going to last you forever, and then you can use that information to really impact your life. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Cedric, really for this very, very good advice. So this is something that can be more well informed, and so that you can make a better decision. All right, so let's go to the next question. All right, what could be the possible risks involved in DNA profiling? What are the chances of inaccuracy?
Okay, so thank you for that question. Now, I would say that what kind of possible risks are there for DNA profiling? To be honest, not much risk, I would say, if you ask me. Right? If the company itself is reputable, they're good. Because I think the only information that people nowadays they fear is maybe that their data is leaked out. But then again, it depends, right? Because most of us, or most of the companies right now who is doing genetic testing, they are typically quite credible, and they have the natural certification to do genetic testing, right? So be it whether it's in hospital environment or is it in the direct-to-consumer kind of companies, right? So and chances of them wanting to sell your data is very unlikely, because that actually destroys trust in that company. So most of them won't want to do that, because they just want to sell you their service and not sell your data to other people, because that would destroy their primary service or their primary businesses. Okay, so that's not. And if you're talking about in terms of health, I would say bygone are the days where people take genetic sample from blood. Okay, because blood, sometimes you say you prick, then there can be infection and whatnot. Now most of the time we are actually using saliva swab, and saliva swab is just some cheek cells, okay, and then putting into a test tube and then sending to a laboratory for testing. But of course, take note that if you do that, always remember to fast at least 1 hour, because if you don't, the food that you eat, okay, will contaminate your sample, and then therefore that will result in the inaccuracy of your report. Okay, so like that's why based on your second question about inaccuracy. So again, coming back to good companies and bad companies. So good companies, sometimes they are so good that even if person were to send a dog saliva, and we have cases where here before, people just send dog saliva to test. Right, a company that has good technology, they will know that this is a dog saliva, and they tell you that, hey, this dog saliva, don't try to be funny, right? But if you send it to a company that don't have good tech equipment, and then they will think your dog saliva is human saliva, and they will give you a report based on your pet, not based on you, right? So you don't want that, right? So so this is just some information for you all to understand.
All right. So in other words, it's very important to really have a reputable.
Yeah.
All right. Kind of company to able to do that kind of profiling, to provide accurate result. But of course, it's also important to follow the procedure as being prescribed when you are doing the swab test. All right. So let's see what other questions we have. All right. So how long does it take to do a DNA profiling, and how long does it take for the result to be back?
Yeah. Okay, so to do a DNA profiling itself is quite fast, right? So as mentioned, nowadays a lot of companies, what they do is they just do a saliva swab, and then through a saliva swab, they just put in the test tube and then they mail it away, right? So now the test itself, the duration of the analysis will again depend on laboratory to laboratory. The fastest is 10 days so far, okay, as I know. The longest, it can take up to 1 to 2 months, right, to get a report. But even after that, then most likely they'll give you a digital report, or even if you are working with a provider, which I highly recommend. You say if you're working with let's say a B2B company that is partnering with a genetic laboratory, okay, to deliver that test report to you. So get it from the provider instead, because you may need to pay a bit more just for the provider, because the provider also have to make some margin. But what you get from the provider is that you actually get services, you get personalized services where that provider can actually help you decipher the report and give you consultation and perhaps even corrective action, okay, with that report. So rather than you just taking the report from the genetic company and then that's it, understand, and put it one side. So if you have a provider that is partnering with a genetic company, like say a wellness coach, a life coach, a fitness coach, for example, if you want to lose weight based on genetic way, you can do that, right? And then that will again allow you to then have a better vision of what you want to achieve from understanding or getting your knowledge of your genetics through the report. Yeah.
No, with that, right, actually, I myself have a couple of questions. So, based on this, just wonder if, let's say, because this live streaming and this video is not only just meant for Singapore, it's also reaching out to Asia. Now, what if we have our Asian friends, all right, who are also interested in this profiling testing? How can this be done?
Okay, so then I think first of all is getting that DNA kit mailed to your house. So then once you find a provider, you find a DNA company or you find a B2B provider that provides the service, then the DNA company or the DNA the partner can actually mail the kit to your house, and then when you get a kit, they'll probably have clear instructions on how to administer it, and then after that, then just mail out. Right, and then when the report is out, more often than not, the report is actually digital. In this modern time, it's all digital. There's a PDF, and which you can print out. Okay, so and once you have that digital, obviously, then this can be sent anywhere, even overseas, to our Asian friends. And of course, if you are working with a provider that provides a professional service based on a genetic report, okay, then you can always be doing Zoom consultation, Zoom conferencing. Of course, things like say fitness, right? You can't do it because you need to go to a physical gym. But by and large, let's say if it's a virtual consultation, it's very, very possible in this modern time and age. Yeah.
Talking about profiling for personality, all right. Since we are coming to the end of this Q&A, just want to know that other than personality profiling, what else a DNA profiling can do?
Okay, good question, Roland. So now the DNA itself as a topic is actually very broad, right? So DNA can be used in a variety of manner, right? So it can be used to not just to assess a person's personality. You can be talking about health risks. It can be talking about genetic traits or wellness, whether a person has propensity to have cardiovascular illnesses, high cholesterol. High cholesterol itself can also be a genetic trait, right? So whether a person has a high risk of having inflammation and things like that. So that's all health related, right? So and whether a person can be fitter or can easy to build muscle, because we know sometimes when people who they go to gym, they want to have that very nice body, but no matter how much they work, they still remain skinny because that's their body type. But you know that sometimes with a genetic report, and some genetic reports, some companies out there actually, very interesting enough, also give DNA personalized fitness plans and even meal plans, where just by eating right, they are able to lose weight naturally. Not through keto diet, not through Atkins diet, not through adjusting their food, cutting away certain elements of food, but just by eating the right portion based on genetic makeup, they're actually able to lose weight. So it's very, very interesting out there, right? So, and this kind of technology is growing more and more and more, right? So you can actually be looking at that as well.
So having said that, looks like we will have more session to explore further what this other kind of profiling that involve the DNA profiling. All right. So let's see what any other questions we have. All right. So if not, then let's see any more. All right. Okay. So in that case, I think we were able to end this session today, and I think Cedric really have shared so much information about what this is all about, and I hope that this can be a takeaway for some of you. In fact, if you are interested to find out more, do join our mentoring group, our online mentoring group. We do have a QR code, all right, on the screen, and with that, right, all you need to do is scan and join us. So from there, right, we can actually share with you more information. So that, in fact, if you also have any question for us, we'll be happy to actually answer. And with that, I also hope that you will have a good night and a good coming weekend. And Uncle Roland, looking forward to see you again. And we will want to explore further into other aspects about living life to the fullest. And we will continue to explore this aspect about personality, about our self-motivation, about the way that we do things, the way in our relationship management, in the way that we deal our communication with others, and how we can strive to be successful. So with this, thank you all of you for attending today's live talk, and we're looking forward to see you again. So with this, thank you, Cedric.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you,
and Uncle Roland signing out. Bye-bye.